welcome to episode 93 of the Travel Like a Boss podcast. I'm here with Chris Backe. He's from One Weird Globe as well as Choose a Way, which is a interactive guidebook company. His blog is about traveling to weird places, so kind of excited to talk about both the subjects. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me on, Johnny.
Yeah, so where exactly did you start all this, and where are you now?
I am currently calling you from Medellin, Colombia. My wife and I have been here about 3.5 months. It's been a fun time exploring South America for the first time. We lived in Asia for several years, took a trip around Europe for a few months, and Medellin's our first stop in South America.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I would love to hear a little bit more about South America. I'm currently in Johannesburg, South Africa. So this is kind of different because most of the time I interview people that I meet in person, usually either traveling through Chiang Mai or somewhere else. But now that I'm traveling in South Africa and I haven't met any entrepreneurs here yet, it gives me kind of an excuse to reach out to people over Skype. So this is kind of fun. I mean, we're literally in the two furthest places in the world from each other.
Just about, yeah. Yeah, I can imagine if you get someone from Canada or maybe like northern Russia, maybe you get that further distance away sort of thing. No, actually, Colombia, at least the Medellin area, is actually the northern hemisphere. And it's a fact I got wrong even after moving here a few weeks in. I was wondering when the seasons were going to start changing, and I'm going, hang on, let's look at that map. Nope, we are actually in the northern hemisphere.
Well, I would have absolutely assumed that it was below the equator as well, just because it's South America,
Yeah, exactly. You hear South America, and you think, okay, southern hemisphere. The organizers of the globe must have figured this out a while back. Now, when I was younger, me and Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego got along really well. As an adult, you kind of lose the track of these sorts of things. But now, Medellin, Colombia, it's a beautiful city. It's commonly referred to as having a spring-like feel all year round. What that hides is it rains most of the year as well. It doesn't have a distinct rainy season or dry season that I've been able to figure out. But it's almost always in that 25, 26 high sort of range.
Okay.
And
so for Americans, that's like 80, 90. That's pretty good.
Yeah. It's a nice springtime, comfortable temperature. I can go outside with a shorts and t-shirt anytime. My wife gets cold a little bit more easily, so she'll wear some jeans or trousers instead.
Okay. So what actually made you guys go to Colombia?
Well, we had been living in Asia for about 5 years, and we had decided to kind of branch out from Asia. Asia was fun, and we did a lot of cool stuff in Asia. And I think the next question was, well, where can we live next that we can afford? We'd love to live in Europe, and once our businesses begin taking off, we're going to head that way. But for now, South America was sort of the unexplored continent, and it was confirmed after actually going to the T-Bex in Spain earlier this year. I met tons of bloggers that had tons of experience in North America, in Europe, in Asia. And as I was asking around, we had been thinking about South America, and I asked, okay, who's been to South America? Show of hands, and almost nobody had had any real experience on the continent. And I thought there's an entire continent of stuff to see out there, and people that go on the package tours, they know the Galapagos Islands, they know Machu Picchu, they might go down all the way to southern Argentina because that's close to Antarctica. There's a whole continent of stuff to see there, so that kind of made the decision a bit easier.
Yeah, I can imagine that most of the people that you met, especially, to be kind of surprised that people in Spain, I guess it's a little bit different, but if you meet, let's say, travel bloggers in Thailand at the Bloggers Retreat, or just entrepreneurs in Southeast Asia in general, it makes sense that they would have traveled around there more than they have South America. Mm. But have you met a lot of other digital nomads or entrepreneurs since you've been in South America?
A few. They're here. In fact, it's interesting. Some of the places that recommended Chiang Mai back in the day as a place for digital nomads to come and settle and crash while they're bootstrapping their business or whatever, some of those places are actually recommending Medellin now as well. Chiang Mai is still great. Chiang Mai is an awesome city. We lived there for 6 months. And I think the option behind choosing Medellin is partially the language and also partially the culture. basically, if you know Spanish and you're already reasonably comfortable in Spanish, Medellin is going to feel like a much better fit than Chiang Mai could. Doesn't have the coffee culture of Chiang Mai. So if you're looking for the coffee, stick with Chiang Mai. But
that's surprising.
yes.
I think a lot of people would assume that Colombian coffee would be great, but the fact is they probably export most of those good beans, and then
actually that's correct. The hidden secret is that most of the supposedly the best stuff gets exported. The good stuff gets kept and sold on the high end. Everything else gets thrown into the mix for the local consumption, and it makes sense on some level. The best beans abroad get what, $9-10 a pound. By the time you roast it and ground it and everything else that goes into the process of making coffee, you can get a whole lot more for that same coffee bean abroad than you could in the local market. I can pick up a bag of Colombian coffee, like 500-gram bag, local, brand, nothing fancy about it, for $2.50, maybe $3 US.
Yeah, and how drinkable was that?
That's very good. I'm drinking it right now.
Okay, nice. What's funny is the coffee I'm drinking right now is from Fremantle, Australia, and it was given to me as a gift by this guy named Gavin. So shout out to Gavin Williams. Big thank you for the coffee. He brought it from Fremantle, which is, I guess, a small town in Australia that's known for their coffee. And he gave it to me at the dropshipping retreat in Krabi, Thailand. And then now I'm drinking it here in South Africa. So it's so crazy how big of the whole, even just the beans itself. I mean, how far it's traveled just for me to have this cup.
Welcome to the flat world, my friend.
Yeah. All right, so you started traveling, you said in 2008. What were you doing before then?
Just before I left the U.S., I was teaching computer classes to the local library and throwing newspapers, of all things. I would get up around 2:30 a.m. I would drive to the warehouse on the outskirts of town. I'd pick up a couple hundred newspapers. I would wrap them or bag them if it was raining, and then drive into downtown Lexington, Kentucky, throw the newspapers. I would usually be done by about 6 or 6:30. And at that point, I went home, took a shower, cleaned up, changed clothes, got in my khakis and polo shirt mode, then drove to the library to teach a computer class or two every day. These were basic computer classes, the sort of classes that anyone can sign up for at the local library for free. And some of them started with, "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Chris. Thanks for coming today. This is a keyboard." And I held up a keyboard.
Wow.
"This is a mouse." And I held up a mouse. "This is a hard drive." I held up a hard drive. The second half of that first class was primarily spent on a mouse tutorial created by Microsoft. This is how to left click. This is how to right click. This is how to double click. And every so often I'd get a person come up and ask, "Well, why don't we double right click?" And I never honestly thought, I don't know. You should write Microsoft and ask them that. "Oh, I think I'll do that. Thank you."
Well, I'm glad you're not dealing with that anymore. And I can't believe you used to wake up at 2:30 in the morning to start work. That's insane.
Actually, believe it or not, for all the awkwardness that ensues of waking up when everyone's going to bed, it actually worked out pretty decently. I got up at 2:30, and the computer class would finish at noon. So a few minutes after noon, I'm done for the day. I can go home, I can get my shopping done, I can get whatever I needed to do done. I just couldn't stay out all night because, again, 2:30 comes pretty early when you're waking up to it.
Yeah, so what time would you go to bed normally then?
Typically around 8 p.m. or so.
Okay.
One of the guys I knew, he was a nighttime DJ, so he was used to late nights and early mornings and stuff. So what he would do, he would wake up at 6 p.m. or so. He'd go to the club, do his DJ shift. He'd get off, he'd clean up or something, and then he'd go to the warehouse, pick up his papers, and he'd be done by 6 a.m. And so the term night owl really comes to mind.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you're glad you're not doing that with these crazy hours anymore. I mean, just being jet lagged and being on an off schedule for a week or two, I can feel it's not good for my health. I'm not producing the melatonin when I'm sleeping. I just don't feel as focused, even with all this coffee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes no amount of coffee can help you. It's really about getting good sleep and stuff.
Yeah, so super important. And that's another reason why I love being a digital nomad, would be able to work for myself, is it's in our control. We no longer have that excuse of, well, we can't get 8 hours of sleep, or we can't sleep during normal hours because of our job, or because of the commute or whatever it is. Now, if we don't sleep well, we don't eat well, we're not taking care of ourselves, we know 100% it's our own life choice, and we have the option of pursuing it well. We have and I think as digital nomads, we actually have more information, good quality information than the average person does, because we have access to, not only we have the free time to read books, but it's also part of our culture to, to grab our Kindles and sit on a 8-hour plane ride and just crush it.
Yeah. Well, I think another thing that comes up with digital nomads, and I've noticed this myself. We moved when we lived in Thailand. We lived in Thailand for Bangkok for 6 months, in Chiang Mai for 6 months, in Khon Kaen for 6 months, in Krabi for 6 months. We'll be here in Medellin for 6 months, and we'll probably go somewhere else for 6 months or so. That's kind of been our sweet spot there. But every time you move, you've got to pack your stuff up. You've got to change your habits. You've got to get comfortable in a new place. And you want to do this fast, so you don't spend 4 months getting used to a place and then, it's time to move. So what ends up happening is you end up getting comfortable, breaking your old habits, and starting new ones in a way that feels very natural. If you've lived in the same house for 20 years, if you've had the same job for 20 years, you've had the same habits, arguably, since you got married or your kids came, you've had the same habits for years and years. It feels like an impossible Herculean task to break them. And if you build it into your mindset, you build it into your lifestyle from the very beginning, that these habits are temporal, they're something that you're in control of. Your habits are not in control of you. And if you allow yourself to remember that your habits can and should change, even if there's not always a perfectly good logical reason, sometimes you need just to shake things up.
You know what? Actually, make a good point. Since I've been here, I'm staying at Larissa's family's house, and they live in this next to a nature reserve. So it's a big gated community with like electric fences everywhere. But what's cool is they have this park that's like, it's just on top of the hill, so it's maybe a 10-minute walk, but inside the community. And next, on the opposite side of this electric fence, there are wild, kudus and bucks and gazelles and giraffes and zebras. And you don't always see them, but what I've been doing is every single morning, very first thing. So instead of me just going on my laptop, like, what I would do, let's say back home, back in Chiang Mai, just start working straight away, I decided, because the time zone here is so different, and when I wake up, it's midnight in the US, and I don't need to reply to anyone anyways, let me change up my habits, and let me go for a walk in the morning, go over to this park, see if I can spot any wild animals, and then, really just start my morning slow and work in the afternoon, and sometimes even just after dinner, just because so I can match the time zone. And it's very different than what I was doing in Chiang Mai, but what you said, it still works. It just feels more natural like this.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you know what? Actually, you're a fellow digital nomad, so I'm sure you know these. Next time you have that issue where you go, hey, I know the time zones don't quite match. Gmail has Streak, and there's also Boomerang. These are two different extensions. I think they're for Chrome and maybe Firefox. And what they do is you write the post as you would any other post, and instead of hitting send, a little button comes up next to it that basically says send later. So you could schedule the post to match whatever time zone you want it to go to. Now, certainly you can wait until it's the proper time, but sometimes that's not always feasible or possible. Sometimes you do your best writing in the morning or whenever you wake up or right before you go to bed. So what I found is that that's actually a fun little way of writing emails when it's convenient for you, but not necessarily sending them until it's the right time for them to be received.
I actually do use Boomerang, and I love it.
Yeah?
What's funny is I used to stress about that, especially with my customers from my dropshipping store, because I didn't want to email them at 4 in the morning or 2 in the morning, having them think like, what's going on, because they assume I'm in the US. It's a US company. We sell to Americans. We ship from the US. And when I started, I think the first couple of times where I forgot to click send later and I just clicked send, it freaked me out. I was thinking, oh my God, they're going to reply asking, why are you emailing me at 2 in the morning? Or worse, when my suppliers would, I would send it to them. I would wonder if they would think, okay, where are you in the world? And after a few times, I realized nobody cared. And one of my suppliers would actually email me back at 1 a.m. from their phone. And I think she likes me more now because she assumes I'm working my butt off at 2 a.m, sending emails.
Yeah, the digital after effects of a nomadic lifestyle. It should be a master's thesis
But
somewhere.
one thing I do use the send later for is when I am on the same time zone as someone and they start going back and forth with the emails as if it was instant chat. What I'll do is I'll write them a long email with bullet points of everything we need to talk about, and then I'll click send later, and that way it cuts that instant chat off, and they know, okay, I need to be more concise with these emails. Johnny, that's not his style to go back and forth like it's like it's a chat room. Let me actually think about this email. Let me write out everything, all the questions in one, and then we only have one email going back and forth per day.
Yeah, that saves so much time.
I like it
with anything you're doing.
All right, so what do you mentioned at first that you like living in places for about 6 months at a time. Why do you think that is?
I think the simple answer is that it became a standard way of getting things done after what happened in Bangkok. We've been living in Bangkok for about 5 months. We were signed to a 1-year lease in an apartment, and we had a 1-year business visa, and we were all good there. I just didn't want to be in Bangkok anymore. Wasn't really a huge fan of the city. An opportunity came up where a friend was looking for a bigger apartment, and she was looking for some of the photo studio stuff that I had. So we made an arrangement wherein she bought the photography stuff. She moved into the bigger apartment right around the 6-month mark, and it's one of those win-win-wins. Everything got cleared with everyone it needed to be cleared with, and we moved on to Chiang Mai. At that point, we went, well, we've got about 6 months left on our visas, and then we'll figure out what we want to do next. And 6 months on, we began thinking, okay, well, what's next? Let's think about another business visa or another visa of some kind in Thailand. And a 1-year visa breaks into 2 6-month periods very nicely. So we thought, okay, well, we've lived in Bangkok, we've lived in the north. Let's try the eastern part of Thailand, the more rural part, and then the south. And that'll be, 2 nice years in Thailand. Lived in all 4 major areas of the country. And since then, it's kind of felt like just the right amount of time to get to know a city or get to know an area really well, and then move on from it before it gets to be too boring. 3 to 4 months probably could work for some people, and a year could probably work for some people. With a year, it can be a little bit more difficult getting the visas all sorted in some countries or situations. I know in Thailand, for example, they were really cracking down on the education visa because it had been abused by a lot of folks. So getting that year-long education visa may not be as possible now as it was a while back. So, but yeah, 6 months in most cases in most countries, getting a 6-month visa works. Is relatively easy to get. Doesn't require a whole lot of jumping through hoops and such.
Yeah, I think that's perfect, and especially because with 6 months, you can start getting really good leases on like condos and things like that, where they might not want to lease month to month or rent month to month, but and they might say they want it for a year, but usually places will take 6 months just because it's still long enough.
Exactly. Yeah. So what it also does is it kind of lets you settle into a routine, which everyone needs. But what it also does is it forces you to change that routine up every 6 months or so. You'll find that as long as you're in the same country and time zone, some elements of that routine stay the same. You can you know roughly when the locals eat dinner, for example, whether it's an early thing or a late thing. You know when the great times to go grocery shopping are, if it's best to go in the mornings or the evenings to avoid the lines. So you've already figured out some aspects of the routine, but enough of it changes when you move that it begins to feel different.
I think that's awesome, especially because after about 8 months, or if you know you're going to be something for a year, you start buying crap. You start accumulating things that you might not need. And I think that's what happened to me in Chiang Mai, because we signed a 1 year lease on our condo, and we knew, okay, well, now I can justify buying an ice cream maker because we need it for a year. I can justify buying a juicer and all these things. And now I'm kind of tied down to all these things. So I'm almost kind of looking forward to the next time I purge, sell everything, move somewhere else for a few months. And I think from that point on, maybe unless I was really going to settle down, I'll try to keep my bag light.
Exactly. Yeah, that's one thing I was telling some expats or people that wanted to be expats. They asked me, like, what's the secret to the expat life? And on one level, there's a quote from the movie Zombieland. Have you seen Zombieland?
I you know what? Part of it, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, all right. So in the movie, he's running from zombies, and this guy's got all these different rules he has to keep safe and survive and stuff. And one of them is no baggage. And he talks in the movie about it being both a physical thing, not having lots of bags to weigh you down while you're running from zombies, but also emotionally. And in my case, I'm talking more about the physical sense. The more crap you have to carry around the world, the harder it is to feel like you can actually move around the world. So every 6 months when we move, there's a purge. It's not always pretty. It's not always awesome to do. But humans inevitably collect stuff, sort of stuff that seemed necessary or useful when you bought it. But 6 months in, a year in, the longer it's been since you bought it, the more you go, do I still need that? Do I still use that? And so when it comes down to the reality of, okay, I have a carry-on suitcase, I have a computer bag, and I can get a bigger piece of luggage if I want, but that's what I want to get it down to. I want to try to get as much of it as I can into a carry-on and a computer bag. And the notion of that sounds impossible to some people, because they're like, how do you do that? Don't you have so much stuff? Yeah, I don't keep it all.
I like it. So now you've been to a bunch of countries. So you started in Korea, went all through Asia, and now you're in South America. Actually, no. So you went to Europe for a while too. So far, out of all these places, if you had to just pick one, where would you spend the next year?
Oh man, is money no object?
Money's no object.
Money's no object. Okay, I would probably go back to Germany. Actually,
okay. And what part?
I had a great time. I personally had a blast in the Berlin area. I'd love to explore that scene. We were there for a little over a week, and it's the sort of thing where, as a tourist, you know how you can't really get an appreciation of every aspect of a city because there's just not enough time to take it all in. That's the sense I got from Berlin. There's all these underground clubs and all kinds of fun stuff happening. Live music, everything happening under the sun. And I barely got to scratch the surface of it.
You know what? There's a very good chance that this summer I'm going to spend a couple months in Berlin.
Oh, nice. The thing I really enjoyed there, did you hear about the bear karaoke?
No, what is that?
Okay, so it's at this public park. I don't remember the name offhand. And it was called Bear Karaoke or Bear Cub, Bear Pub, Bear something karaoke, and they've set it up. There's like a little pavilion or auditorium sort of thing. There's a stage, and there's a microphone, and there's the karaoke screen, and there's a host, and he does a public karaoke session. The thing is, if you're terrible, the audience will boo you. They will throw stuff. And if you're good, they cheer, they clap, and they scream, and they stand, and they sing with you. It's kind of like singing in front of a real-life rock band or Guitar Hero. The day I went, most of the singers were really, really good. It really did feel like a Germany's Got Talent or some such. But yeah, alcohol and just sitting out there watching cool stuff. It's very much a place to people watch if you enjoy that.
Yeah, and Berlin is definitely more expensive than Chiang Mai or other places, but I would think it's actually a little bit cheaper than being in most places in the U.S., especially in California.
Oh yeah.
So the goal, and they have a great, entrepreneur scene out there, great digital nomad scene. Summer's beautiful there. So, I don't have any concrete plans yet, but definitely Berlin is going to be on top of my list to kind of bootstrap out of, or not bootstrap out of, but home base out of. And what I love about it the most is your short train ride from places like Prague or Vienna or all these other cool countries in Europe.
Oh yeah, it's a great base to the rest of the continent. If you're going to be in Europe for any length of time, you've got to get around the country instead of just staying in the one city or country.
Yeah, I like it.
But yeah, actually, I should mention one of the Choose Away books we're working on. It's going to be Berlin. It's going to be February 2016. Yeah, so the Berlin book should be coming out before you get there.
Awesome. So tell everyone about Choose Away and how does that work?
Sure. So One Weird Globe is my main blog. Choose Away is a series of interactive travel guidebooks. If you can imagine the Choose Your Own Adventure books mashed up with A Lonely Planet. What happens when they make a baby, basically? Are you familiar with the Choose Your Own Adventure books?
No, but I've done Mad Libs.
Okay. Choose Your Own Adventure books were American children's books back in the day, late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s, and so on. These were interactive books that gave you a choice at the bottom of the page. So if you want to go into the palace, turn to page 10. If you would rather explore outside, turn to page 12. You didn't read them straight through like a normal book. When you saw a choice, you chose one page to go to and then continued the story from there. I loved those books as a kid. I loved them. So about a year ago, I was writing a guidebook about Bangkok, and I thought, what if you added some choices to this book? Instead of telling people you must go here, then you must go here, then you must go here, what if you gave them a choice in that? So I played around with the idea, and I came up with Choose Away. And what it does, you start a day, and it asks you, what time is it? What time are you ready to leave your hotel or your hostel in the morning? So before 9 a.m., 9 to 10, 10 to 11, afternoon, etc. And then it gives you three choices. Which place do you want to start your day with? In Bangkok, you might have a palace, you might have a temple, you might have a museum dedicated to Batman. And so you tap your choice, and you'll see the name of the place, a nice photo of it, the description, the address, the GPS coordinates, the admission fee, the hours, and then the directions, which, I make it a point to give really good directions. And then it asks you, what's next? And we have 3 more places to choose from. And so you'll be guided through up to 5 places in a day, and then you reach the end of the day. You can start another day, or you can look at the location index. So if you saw a place where you think, gosh, I wonder if da-da-da-da is in the book, get to the location index, yep, there it is. And what I've been hearing from readers, about half of the readers I've talked with go through it on the fly. So they'll pull out their book, okay, we're finished at the Museum of Batman, what's next? And they'll pull it out, they'll scroll, they'll make their choice, tap the button, and then they see the next place. Oh, wow, cool. All right, let's look at the directions and go there, put the device away, enjoy the place, pull it back out. The other half of people are actually planning their trip out ahead of time, so they're using the book to give them choices without having to go through all 300 pages of the guidebook or whatever. But so right now there are books on Bangkok, Philadelphia, Sydney, Chicago, Amsterdam, Bangkok food, Prague. By the end of 2015, there'll also be books on Houston and Lisbon. Next year, we already have scheduled the Barcelona and the Berlin book. And each one of these is written by a local expert. It can be a local, it can be an expat. It's someone that knows the town like the back of their hand. So no Indian writers here, no BS writing from the internet. I look for people that really know an area like the back of their hand. And one of the questions I'll ask people sometimes is just, for example, where's the best place to get a pizza? And if you tell me Domino's or Pizza Hut or Papa John's, I'm just we're done. Thank you for your time.
You know what? That's actually a great idea because, without even thinking about it, even though I don't eat, pizza that much in Chiang Mai, because I've been living there, I can name two places. I could say if you want American style, you got to go to Duke's. If you want like a, authentic Italian style, you want to go to Why Not? And
exactly.
That's just something that I guess someone that knows the city well enough would just know that automatically.
Exactly. Well, either they'll have been asked that sort of question before, or people will have asked them that, or they'll have wanted to know for themselves because at some point people will regard them as an expert. But yeah, one thing I've found is that the people who have the best answers for that, or at least the most thoughtful ones, tend to write the very best books.
I like that. So, if anyone wants to kind of check out the site, it's chooseaway.com, and I'll have that in the show notes too. This is episode 93. I'm going through right now the sample that you guys have, which is right now it's the Bangkok one. And it's pretty cool the way it works. I mean, it's basically a guidebook, but the very first page it says, don't read this from page to page. Make sure you click the links on the bottom. And exactly how you described it. It says you just woke up in Bangkok. What time is it right now? And you can click. I could click before 9 a.m. And then it'll ask me, okay, I have two choices. What do I want to do first? Do I want to go to Bangkok's best known tourist attraction and see the Grand Palace? Or do I want to go to 3 parks for the price of none? So I guess it's a free park I can go to.
Yeah.
So for me, I guess I'd want to go to Grand Palace, give that a click, and there you have it. I have a photo of it. I have the address. I have a link to Google Maps. I have the admission price. I have a write-up to it of directions. And yeah, I could definitely see why this would be fun for people. Especially, I think the way I would use it is I would just have it on my phone when I show up somewhere. You're not really sure what to do, and it's almost like a game. It's like an adventure.
That really is that's exactly what I was going for. One thing I want to note is that there are versions for Amazon and as a PDF, so whichever style of book you like. Also, the book does not require an internet connection. If you're worried about roaming, if you don't want to worry about finding Wi-Fi, nothing in the book requires internet. Obviously, if you want to connect to the internet to find the Google Maps, then of course you have to do that. But everything in the book is built into the book. You don't have to download anything else. There's no app packs or bundles or anything. It's all in the book.
Okay, easy. I like that. So I also think it's cool that you have expats or just travelers write these books. And it's also a great way for you to get experts. And so instead of it just being about the couple places you've been, now you can really scale it. Because I was kind of surprised when you said places like Houston or Philadelphia, because I wouldn't have thought of that.
Well, what's actually happened is I basically put it out there to my circle of friends when I first started this out. And I basically said, I want to cover world-famous cities. Not necessarily the most touristed cities, not necessarily the biggest, hugest cities in the world, but world-famous cities. And by that I meant a city that you didn't have to say the country name in order to know roughly which country it is. Most people know where Houston is. Most people know where Prague is. Most people know where Barcelona is. And since this is Travel Like a Boss podcast, I wanted to mention, if you know a city like the back of your hand, look at the website, chooseaway.com. How it works for writers is you make 70% of all royalties received from the Amazon version, from the PDF version, and it's a co-publishing model. So if you apply and you're accepted, you get a Word document and an Excel spreadsheet. And you just fill in the template for each place. And then I take that and I make it pretty and I add the choices and I make it a book. So and again the writers make 70% of all royalties received.
That's awesome. I think that's a great way for digital nomads or travelers, if they're going to be in a city anyways, if they're living somewhere anyways, and they see that there isn't a guide yet on that city, no matter what it is, they can be the one to write it.
Exactly.
So once they write the book, do they market it or do you market it? Or is it a combination of both?
It's actually a combination. What ends up happening is that I have my own set of connections and expertise on social network or whatever. But every expert writer has their own set of connections in the city. And so what I ask the writer to do is to reach out to the magazines, the newspapers, the bloggers, the journalists, anyone they know in that city. because they're going to have a better angle than a random guy living somewhere else will. So they're the local writer. I ask them to handle the local marketing where they can. I put it out on Facebook and a lot of the other groups, and a lot more general sort of marketing, and I asked them to help with the city marketing. And what that actually does is it gives the journalist or whomever's telling a story, gives them a better angle. If you can picture the headline, local author writes quirky travel book, you know.
Okay. Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And I almost think of Choose a Way as like a Udemy, but for travel guides, where Udemy or Choose a Way will do its marketing direct to the site, or maybe even to some of your best-selling guides. But every single writer, and every single guidebook kind of helps lift up all the other books too. So someone buys the one for Houston and they like it. Why wouldn't they buy the one for Philadelphia or to Bangkok or to Amsterdam?
Exactly. As I first started kind of standardizing the idea and the format, I thought of it being sort of like a Lonely Planet, in that when you purchase a Lonely Planet, it's a franchise, it's a standardized sort of based book. For better or for worse, when you buy a Lonely Planet, you know the sort of quality and the sort of content you're going to get. When you buy a Choose Away, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get 35 to 40 places in that city, carefully curated, chosen by a local expert. You're going to get good directions. You're going to get correct information, the addresses and phone numbers and all that stuff. You're going to get GPS coordinates and a link to Google Maps. Every book has this. Is just standardized across the board. So it ends up giving it, that's the hope, is to have a reputation that precedes itself eventually. So if you liked one book, you'll probably like the others.
I think this is great. And, just from what I see right now, I see a lot of growth in this, where as a writer, as a digital nomad, you might invest, quite a bit of time writing the book. And right away, maybe right now, the audience isn't going to be huge. You're going to have to spend some of your own time and energy promoting it. But to me, it's one of those things where it's kind of valuable real estate, because you're not going to have 10 guides to Chiang Mai or 10 guides to Vienna. Once that slot is filled, it's full.
It's done. Yeah, exactly. So I'll work with when I begin working with the writer, I tell them, I give them a deadline, and I say, hey, you're probably a great person. If you get busy, if you can't finish it, if you need to back out for any reason, no hard feelings, but let me know, because you're basically blocking that spot for someone else that might come up and do a great job. There have been a couple of people that have dropped out for a few different reasons, like family and whatever. But as long as I know and can kind of work with it, then we're okay. The thing that really makes it stand out, I think, in my mind, is that it's not really visible on the website and it's not visible in the books. But for most of the writers I've worked with, this is their first book. And some of them have had this idea of writing a book. They've kept a blog. Maybe they've started some stories or whatever. But this is their first book. And from the writer's perspective, when I tell them that I'm handling the editing, I'm handling the formatting, I'm handling some to most of the marketing, I'm handling Amazon and the whole publishing process, all you need to do is write a kick-ass book. And if you're a person who's been held back by these fears, well, how do I format the book? Where do I go to do da? When you hear someone's going to handle that for you without, costing you any money, it's a huge sigh of relief. And so what I actually end up doing with most writers is encouraging them in their, not just their writing style, but this is how I'm editing the book. This is why I'm changing this. We're going to have to take these places out because of da. These places would be good replacements instead. Or when you give directions, make sure you give in this sort of order, this style, so it's clearer. And my hope is a Choose Away book might be their first book or their 10th book, but they feel empowered by the process to go on and write their second or their third or their fifth. And knowing how it works once, the more times you can see it done, and when it's done with you personally, you're able to see the process and go, hey, that wasn't so bad.
Yeah,
I could
and,
do it
and I
again.
think especially starting out, having that template to write it with, not having to deal with the editing and all that, and the publishing part of it, I think it's fantastic. I think you were giving people a great platform to write on, and honestly, if I had if I didn't have all my projects going on, if I was starting out and I wanted to write my first book or have some kind of another source of income, I would absolutely do this, especially right
Yeah.
now, while like you can get these prime spots. I mean, this is to me like the ultimate real estate that is going to go away very quickly.
Exactly. One of the, I think it was the Barcelona guy, the author of the Barcelona book. He was were Barcelona. One of the authors, I don't remember which one, mentioned how writing a book is a great way of establishing their authority. And as a published author, it can definitely tell you that when you have a book to your name and it's on a subject you know well, it can only enhance that reputation. So if you're a tour guide giving a tour in your city here, already saying, yeah, I've got a book on it. Now, maybe your book isn't always a fit for every tour, but I've written a book about Amsterdam. Translation, I know what I'm talking about. I've been doing this for years. I've been around, and I know the city really well and all this other stuff. So there is a fair bit of authority and credibility that comes with writing a book, even a self-published book, even a book that's seen on Amazon that's not in a print bookstore.
Oh, definitely. And if anything else, just to satisfy your parents,
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, like when my parents never really understood what I did online. Even with my e-commerce stores, they never really understood what it was. But when I think it was my aunt or something, had a paperback version of my book. I think it was either Life Changes Quick or 12 Weeks in Thailand. That's when my parents were like, "Wow, my son is an author," and they got off my back.
It's interesting. I definitely have found it interesting that so much of what we do in the electronic computer internet space, it's so abstract, and you can explain it to people, but it's maybe they don't quite get it because it's all, again, it's abstract, it's up in the air, and sometimes it really does come down to that paperback, gotta see it in my hands, gotta hold it in my hands sort of feel. And that's why in 2016 I'm actually going to be looking at publishing print versions of some books. It's going to be based on demand. It's going to be based on what people are wanting. But with everyone, their mother, their auntie making ebooks now, I've actually seen quite a few travelers. They still revert. They still go to the printed guidebook. And having done a fair bit of traveling, I can see why. You don't have to worry about battery life. You don't have to worry about attracting too much attention to yourself with some fancy, electronic device. So I'm definitely going to be looking at printing print books for some of the Choose Away books for people to enjoy that way.
Yeah, definitely, and especially if you already have the content, it's almost like another form of a potential revenue that you might not have gotten before.
Exactly, and what I've also read with some of the top Amazon sellers is that if you have a print book, let's say you price your print book at $14.99 and your ebook is $4.99, all of a sudden your ebook price looks very cheap.
Yeah, 100%, exactly.
So if anything you can do to bracket or make a price look lower, yeah. Like some people do. Yeah, exactly. Some people do it with an audio book, which doesn't really work for the format I'm developing. But if you have a print book, you can also have an audio book as well. Either of those are different streams of income, but they also make the ebook look like the cheapest choice. And sometimes that's exactly what you want them to go to because ebooks will pay more royalties. There's less costs in distributing it or creating it. It's just a matter of your time and putting it out there.
I like it. Great tips for everyone. So the other thing I wanted to ask you about is I saw in your bio that you're married and you're traveling around with your wife. Did you guys meet back in the U.S. or where did you meet?
We actually met in South Korea. Here's your flat world story for today. American meets Canadian in South Korea, gets married, moves to Thailand.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, level 2 of that story, my wife's name is Laura, and she's a professional Korean to English translator. She was working with a Korean company who is working with a Bulgarian video game company, and the person she was in contact with was a German-born person living in Cairo. So to put this story together, a Canadian living in Thailand is translating Korean to English for a Korean and Bulgarian video game company working with a German-born person living in Cairo.
Wow.
Once again, welcome to the flat world.
Yeah, that's crazy. And is Laura Korean Canadian, or is she just
she's
white?
100% Canadian.
Okay.
And yeah, so we actually met on OkCupid.com of all places.
Oh wow.
Yeah, well, and there's a funny story there as well. When you're traveling long term, you find love in the weirdest places. Some people find it in the hostel. Some people find it at a bookstore. Some people get introduced by a friend. And there were actually quite a few women on the OkCupid website in Korea, and there still are. So if you're looking at making a connection, OkCupid's great for that. And I actually made a mistake with the website. On OkCupid at the time, they give you a percentage match based on your profile. So you'll see how similar or how different the two of you are. At the time, when I first started using the site, I said, okay, well, I want people to be, pretty similar to me, similar interests and whatever. So I only really looked at matches that were like 80% or above. And went on some dates, had a fun time, but eventually I realized I did not want to spend the rest of my life with my clone.
Okay, makes sense.
So, yeah, I had a lot of fun first dates, met some fun people, but wasn't really, getting that sort of connection. So later on, I said, okay, let's drop the whole percentage thing. Let's try to do this in a more intelligent sort of way instead of an automated way. And what I ended up doing was reading the profiles. And I presume this works for the same whether you're a woman looking for a man, whether you're a man looking for a man, or a woman looking for a woman. You read what they have to say. And if you can link to a blog, if you can link to something else where they can really get to know you through that blog, that website, your Medium account, your Twitter, your whatever, the aim was to understand who they were and who was actually on the site for serious. If you just filled in the bare requirements to have a complete profile, you're probably not all that into it. If you've taken the time to write a 1,000-word essay on yourself on OkCupid, that's a good sign you're probably serious about finding someone on the site.
Okay. So did you say that you linked them to your blog, or would you look at stalk their blog?
I would actually go both ways. I think I linked to my travel blog at the time, and I also encouraged. As I began talking to people, I began to encourage them to share their Twitter or their blog. Facebook seems rather personal to ask someone, but where posts on Twitter are public by default, and a blog is also public by default, there's not the same sort of, I'm sharing my personal friends' photos with the world on Facebook. So I asked for Twitter and I asked for blog because those are both already by default public facing. And if they shared them, then great. If they didn't, no big deal. But it was a great opportunity to see a bit more of the person, different dimension.
I think that's so smart. And actually, I think that's cool that that all of us listening to this probably have some kind of travel blog. And I think some people are scared that all their info is going to be out there. But for me, I think it's actually easier now that everything's just out there. And if somebody really wanted to get to know me or, figure out what I've been up to, who I am, they could just Google my name. They could just go to johnnyfd.com and it's all there.
Exactly. Now, and for better or for worse, that does raise an issue of, okay, how much of my stuff are they going to be reading before a first date? And are they going to come up and go, oh yeah, I love that post you wrote in 2009 about that trip to Bali or da-da-da-da-da. That can come off sounding a little stalkerish, guys. If you've read everything she has to say and, if you sound really, really personal, that can come off as rather stalkerish. So, guys...
Yeah, maybe just talk about the last post.
Keep that crap to yourself, all right? Last post, the last few posts, okay. If she's mentioned in 3 or 4 posts over the years that she likes to dance. Awesome. Put that in the back of your mind as a dossier for second date stuff. Or if you might work it into your first date. Okay, I thought we'd go take a salsa lesson.
All right. Well,
At that
great
point,
dating advice. Let me ask you about your plans. Have you and Laura talked about how long you two plan on keep traveling, where you want to end up living, things like that?
Actually, yes and no. It was our third date when I actually asked her if she wanted kids, and she said no. And I asked, "Are you sure?" And she said yes. And I said, "Great, we can now continue to our fourth date." Um, it sounds rather odd, but neither of us really want kids, and we plan on being nomads indefinitely.
Okay.
As far as where exactly, right now we're in South America. We're looking to be here for at least a few years. We've talked about taking an epic road trip across the U.S. and maybe Canada to see some of the fun stuff in those countries. Beyond that, who knows? We live a very independent lifestyle. We're both digital nomads, and I cannot tell you how awesome it is to be free.
I think that's awesome how kind of open you were about exactly what you wanted. I think a lot of people are scared to put out there, that they don't want kids, or the opposite, if they really do want kids. And we always just try to kind of say what we think the other person wants to hear, but in reality, by us just putting exactly what we want out there, maybe we're going to get that perfect person.
Yeah. Well, actually, the reason that question came up was because at the time, my Korean co-teacher, this was a Friday afternoon, we were talking about our plans for the weekend, and my Korean co-teacher at the time, she was mid-30s, maybe mid-late 30s, 3 kids, married, and I asked her, "Oh, what are you going to do this weekend?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm just going to stay home and take care of my kids." And she had this look of, "I don't really want to do that, but that's what I'm supposed to do. That's what I need to do." And I'm like, "Oh well, got a hot date, going traveling." At that point, her eyes kind of lit up. "Oh, where are you going?" And I told her, the city we're going to and some of the places we're going to see there. "Oh, that sounds like so much fun. Well, why can't you travel? What's holding you back?" Well. And she kind of sighs and she looks at the picture of her kids on her desk and she's like, "It's really hard to travel with kids." And didn't know how to tell her at the time that you can travel with kids, you can travel with one leg, you can travel with no legs, you can travel with one arm, you can travel with your hands tied behind your back, you can travel with nobody or anybody. But she perceived that having a family was holding her back. And I remember asking her, "Did you and your husband talk about having kids before you got married?" And she was like, "No, it only came up after I was pregnant with the first one."
Wow. And I'm sure that happens a lot too. And
oh yeah,
people just don't really think that far ahead. And to be honest, most people don't know what they want. And so I think it's really cool that both you and your wife knew exactly what you wanted. Even for me, I do want kids, and because I want kids, I want to get married. But at the same time, I want to do it on my terms. I never want to be that person who feels like they're tied down or that their life is now over because they have this responsibility.
Exactly. And no, I think one thing that also happened, I'm 33. When we were dating, I was 29 and 30. And it was I guess for better or for worse, once you're out of your early to mid 20s and you've kind of gotten past the quarter life crisis, you kind of figured yourself out, if not a complete direction which way you want to go, at least which directions you don't want to go. And through most people's quarter life crises, they've seen one of those two things. They've either seen the way in which they want to go, the thing they have a passion for, or they've seen what they consider horror stories from other people. They don't want to spend the time making those same mistakes. So it's certainly not a mistake to have kids, and it's certainly not a mistake to raise a family. But when you know from the beginning that you don't want kids, it makes that choice a lot easier to pursue. And also, for better or worse, when you're dating, you don't really want to spend umpteen dates in only to realize there's a deal-breaking issue waiting around the corner. "Oh, I'm Christian. Oh, I'm Muslim. We're going to have a tough time." Maybe you can make it work, maybe you can't. or maybe I'm Christian, I'm atheist. We're gonna butt heads on religion all the time. So find out the deal breaking stuff sooner rather than later
And
as
you know
best as
what? I think
possible.
that's great advice, especially coming from someone who, there's a lot of people who give advice who haven't done it, but the fact that you are happily married, the fact that you are, traveling the world with your wife and everything's working out, I'm sure there's, you guys are like any couple, I'm sure there's the fights and everything that do come up, but the fact that you guys made it work shows that not only is it possible, but you actually do know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
You know,
Then it's funny with in the past couple of days here as we're recording this, there were stories on Amazon about Amazon suing fake reviewers and other stories about authors that are using ghostwriters to make their books and stuff like that, and it's all based on the fakeries that the internet allows. And I remember thinking, I'm totally good. Everything I put out's with my own name. The stuff that the authors write, it's not ghostwritten because their names, nice big letters on the front cover. They're listed as the author on Amazon. It really does allow you to maintain a clean conscience about that. And so anytime I read a story like that, I almost kind of cheer a little bit. Yay! Those fake BS books are getting taken down. Yay!
well, it's funny.
Leaving more room
I heard
for
a quote once that they said, "You should always tell the truth because it's the easiest thing to keep track of."
Exactly.
And I've also heard the opposite, where people say, fake it till you make it. And kind of thinking back, it is a way to gain confidence, but at the same time, if you want to do it the right way, and I think with less BS to deal with in the future, going back, from day one, if I could have just said, I'm 5 years old. This is who I am. I know exactly who I am. This is exactly what I want. And if I'd always just asked for exactly what I want, life would have been a million times easier. So, everyone listening to this, I think it's great advice from Chris. Just, put out there exactly what you want, regardless of what other people think is right or just, normal to society. And I think most people listening to this, at least for that part of it, we've stood our ground. We know that the standard 9 to 5 job, the standard, long-term career, living one place isn't the only way, and it might not be the best way.
Exactly, and if I think what a lot of people can learn, it can be an acquired thing of experience. It might be something innately, but knowing that there is always a different option empowers you. Because
100%.
too many people, they go to the 9 to 5 because that's all they've seen. They go to college because that's all they've seen. They might go to get their master's degree because, again, that's all they've seen. Now, of course, we have the internet now. If you've done any reading on mainstream publications, you've probably seen at least one story of the digital nomad, the entrepreneur living abroad. This guy made $100,000 last month on his computer while eating donuts or something like that. You've seen the stories that say there is another way. And these are coming through I saw one in, I think it was The Guardian a few days ago. They're all over the place, and they're happening more and more frequently because more and more people are exploring those paths, and more people are finding success in those paths.
Well, I mean, even just this podcast, this is episode 93, so that means there's been at least 80 entrepreneurs or digital nomads who have been doing things differently, who are successful, traveling the world, doing some kind of online business. And actually, with relationships, I just started reading a book on the plane over to South Africa. So I can't recommend it or not yet because I haven't gotten to the end. But it's by Neil Strauss, who wrote The Game, which was a big game changer 10 years ago when I first read it. And I like his writing style, so I read his new book. I started reading it. It's called The Truth. And it's about relationships where he is trying to decide if he wants to be monogamous and get married and have that perfect one relationship, or if he wants to explore alternative relationships. And I'm only about halfway through, so I don't know how it ends, and I don't know how, I don't know if I can recommend it yet, but it does show, right away that there are all alternatives out there. And by you just saying exactly what you want and not lying to yourself and not just saying, not putting your profile out there trying to be 100% match with everyone, there is an alternative.
Exactly. And honestly, the more specific you can make that persona, like everyone talks in the entrepreneurial world about the persona, your the avatar, the person that's your perfect customer or whatever. That works in life. That works in life just as much as it does in the business world. I know that when I go to an entrepreneurial networking thing or a meetup or any kind of group or any kind of chance to meet other people, I know who I want to meet. That isn't to say I won't meet anyone that doesn't fit that group, but those are the people I'll be naturally drawn to and attracted to first. I personally want to meet entrepreneurs in their 30-something, maybe they're 40-something or 50-something. I want to meet people who've been living in the country or city for more than a year. I want to meet people that have an interest or a passion or a niche in some way. Trying to be a jack of all trades is a difficult proposition in the best of times. If you're Michelangelo, then hey, go for it. But yeah, at the same time, I also meet the younger expats. I'm also happy to chat with anyone that's new to the city or the country, because at that point, it gives me a chance to feel smart. Oh hey man, where's the best place to do da da da? Okay, yeah, that's an easy one. You just go down to da da da, and go from there.
Or you can have them read one of your travel books.
Exactly. Actually, more often than not, I've actually given people the card to my blog and said, I actually wrote a post on that just a couple weeks ago. And since I don't remember it all that well, just search for, keyword, and you'll find it.
I've actually been doing that more and more too, especially with anything to do with Chiang Mai, because it's getting such a popular place and I've been there for so long. There's a lot of things that I personally honestly don't remember. Like I don't remember directions to the red mud quarry where people go cliff jumping. I don't remember how much it costs to go to XYZ place. So now I just send them a link. I do a search on my own blog and then I just send them a link to it, and it makes my life so much easier.
That's actually why I started blogging, so I could remember this sort of stuff.
I love it. All right. Well, Chris, dude, it's such a pleasure talking to you. I really want everyone to check out not only your blog, it's oneweirdglobe.com, but also these travel books, for either if you are interested in traveling to any of these places, or if you want to become a writer and get 70% royalties, which I think is an awesome plan for everyone. So that would be chooseaway.com. And I'll have links to both of these as well as everything else we talked about in the show notes of episode 93 at travellikeabosspodcast.com. Chris, any last words?
Thanks for your time. Thanks for having me on. It's been a blast talking to you. If you're listening to this and you're going, how do I get started with the expat life? Reach out to me. I'm happy to answer questions. Seriously and sincerely. Feel free to ask questions.
Sounds good. Enjoy the rest of Medellin, Colombia. Hasta luego, and best of luck.
Thanks.
All right, ciao. Thank you for listening to the Travel Like a Boss podcast. If you want to hear more, including the bonus How to Choose the Perfect Niche episode, join our mailing list at travellikeabosspodcast.com. See you next week, and remember, if you want to travel like a boss, you need to be your own boss. So start your online business today and start living the lifestyle you've always dreamed of.